All right, welcome back, everyone. I'm teacher Nathan from Writers at Work, and this afternoon, let's take a look at the O Level 2018 Text 4 and Summary. Okay, so how we'll go about this session is as follows. We'll take a look at the text first, and I would like to point out some pertinent information with regards to the text, some vocabulary, some comparison, literary devices, etc. All right. Thereafter, we'll analyze the questions in the question booklet, answer them. After that, then we'll have some time taking a look at the summary writing section. Okay. So without further ado, let's take a look at this non-fiction text here. So if you refer to our, give me a moment. Okay. If you refer to our synopsis here, we already know clearly that this text is talking about Brazilian nuts. Okay, and the first text here actually tells you how the term Brazilian nut is very misleading. Okay, people of the world 123. I'm doing the live later at 2:30. Okay, back to our text here. Paragraph 1 talks about how the name Brazilian nut is very misleading because of two reasons. Number one, you can see that the nut is found in a number of countries in the Amazon River Basin. And number two, the Brazilian nut doesn't contain nuts, but they're actually just seeds. So these are the two reasons why the nut is the term is misleading. Okay, and the word misleading here basically means that something is gives you the wrong idea or impression. Now we also observe another thing, that the trees are scattered through large forests in the Amazon. So when we talk about something being scattered here, we are basically looking at how they are found in various locations. Instead of all clustered together in one particular place. Now, if we move further down, we observe how we are looking at the elaboration of the Brazilian nut. So we look at the height of the trees, the features of the fruits, so on and so forth. Okay, so the first thing we observe is how they liken this fruit to other kinds of commonly known fruits. So if we observe, they talk about how the tree resembles an orange because of the pods. Here, the triangular seeds are arranged in segments like how you would find it in an orange. And the second part is how we talk about how they have spherical pods. Therefore, they resemble that of large coconuts. So there are also other details regarding the height and certain dimensions. I'll just leave it for you to read on your own. Okay, in paragraph 3 here, we observe how the Brazilian nut is sought after by both the people living in cities as well as the indigenous forest tribes. So we look at how they provide over here the protein and calories for tribal rural Amazonans. Then we also see how the oil extracted from them can be used in cooking, and therefore there's a substantial market of the nut oil among the urban people. Okay, so you can see that the benefits is twofold. They benefit the forest peoples, and over here where they benefit the urban people. Now, as we move down, we observe other things. Okay, the first is how the Brazilian nut tree is not really uh, viable to be sold or harvested on a large scale. So we talk about how there are specific conditions that are required for the tree to grow. One being the need for certain pollinators, your large body bees, and also your animal called the agotis. So this is like some I have to search it up on the internet. So it's like a bigger version of a mouse that survives in the forest, right? And we also talk about how there are also human factors that will affect the ability for the Brazilian nut to thrive. So we look at how there is logging, illegal deforestation. And in paragraph 5 here, they also talk about how it may be unviable to actually grow the Brazilian nut in urban areas, where we look at how the nut is very heavy. So if it falls on someone, there are very serious implications to the person. And not forgetting how they can cause flash floods when they block the flow of water in drains. Okay, so this is the whole text. I'll say this whole text is very structured. Every paragraph or paragraphs have a very clear and easy to comprehend idea. Okay, so I would expect when there is a slightly easier text that the questions will be more challenging, and that's how they sieve out the people who are distinction and those who are not. Okay, so please don't be too happy when you encounter a super easy text and in terms of how you can comprehend it. And we'll look at the summary question later, which I feel is quite a killer. Okay, so I'll just leave the information here for a while. Okay, I believe most of you have your 10-year series. You have access to this text. That's why I'm not doing a reading session with you today. However, if you like to look at the question more intently, or if you don't already have the 10-year series, then just give you the opportunity to slowly peruse through this text for a bit. Okay, if there are no questions, and if this if no one has if everyone is clear of what is presented in the text, right, then we'll slowly delve into our questions soon. All right. All right, come, let's take a look at some questions. Now, they say which one word in paragraph 1 tells us the Brazilian nut tree does not grow in groups. So when we talk about one word, this is where it gets scary because it's either you know the word or you don't know the word. And we talk about how they grow in groups here. So when we talk about groups, we are looking at how a number of items are located together. Are located, gathered, or classed together. Now, let's also look at question 15 because both of them are in paragraph 1. So we're looking at how two reasons why it is doubly misleading. So doubly here gives you the idea that it's twice, 2 times. And misleading means that you have that kind of wrong idea or impression of something. Okay, so looking back at our text, we will delve right into paragraph 1. Now you can see, okay, first one, when you talk about how nut trees do not grow in groups, that means they don't grow together. Now, previously I've shared with you the meaning of the word scattered here. If you observe, it means that they are found in various locations. They are not lumped or grouped together. So therefore, the word that we are interested to use is scattered. And the next thing, we talk about how the Brazilian nut is doubly misleading, right? And we can see from this text here how it is so. So on the top here, we talk about how the nut is native to many countries. So even though the name suggests it comes from Brazil, it is not the case in reality. Secondly, we talk about how when we talk about nuts, we will think of something that you can eat. But no, these are not nuts, but they are just seeds inside the fruit. All right. So over here, we have our 2 answers as already. So come, let's write them. Okay. So the one word is scattered. Now this one regarding the 2 reasons, so very straightforward. So first reason would be how uh, the nuts can be found in many places. Let me get my text here. Yeah, okay, that's the first one. It can be found in a number of places in the Amazon basin, number of countries. And secondly is how uh, here people refer to the seeds inside the fruit as a Brazil nut. Okay, okay, come let's take a look at question 16 now. So in paragraph 2, the nut is compared to two other fruits. So over here is also, you can see 2 marks. It's quite a dead giveaway. You just need to get one fruit and one comparison correct is 1 mark already. Okay, and you can see this question is just asking what are the fruits. So it's just a pure listing question, which is pretty straightforward. The only fear or the only pitfall is when you have access denied. So you need to be very laser focused on what is the intent of the question. So in this case, we are just looking at how the fruit as well as how they are compared to it. So we just need to say how they are similar. That's all. Don't have to add additional stuff. So looking at paragraph 2. So over here we see how here the part about coconuts and oranges. So how are they similar? So coconuts is very straightforward. They are spherical in shape. That means it's like a big round ball. So it looks like coconut, similar to coconut. Next, for the orange, we are looking at how they are. The arrangement of the seeds inside the fruit are arranged like that of an orange. Full stop. So we don't have to give additional information like how many seeds. The main idea is how the triangular seeds have an, actually we don't even need to say it's triangular here. This is extra information. I just need to say the seeds are arranged like are arranged in like an orange, like in the segments similar to an orange. That's all. Okay. So come, let's just delve quickly into this and get the answer out. So the two fruits are coconut and orange. All right. So first thing we talk about is the spherical shape of the fruit. Next, we talk about orange and how the arrangement of the seeds inside the fruit are similar. So actually, this question here, right, when they talk about comparison, is a bit misleading. I think a better word, right, actually is similarities. So you can just they can just ask, what are the two fruits in which the pods of the Brazilian nut tree are similar to? Maybe that will be much better. Okay, what's this, Nick? Hi, class for Sec 2? No, our class today is for O-level comprehension. So regardless of whether you are in Sec 1 or Sec 4, this class will still be relevant to you because the English syllabus for all secondary levels is the same. All right? But probably the text that we are looking will be slightly more advanced because it's the O-level text. So do join us if you feel comfortable. Now, if you would like to have weekly classes for our secondary level English, do contact our admin and you can find out more about the lessons and their timings. All right. Okay, let's take a look at question 17 now. Now we're looking at this conversation between your two people. This one is your usual talking head question. Now, when we look at this talking head question, it's important to find out whether we are looking at an anti-thesis versus thesis scenario, or we are looking at a multiple stakeholder scenario. So when we're looking at how anti-thesis versus thesis scenario, we're looking at how there are contrasting viewpoints. So probably person A will say something and person B will may talk about the opposite thing. Now, when we talk about multiple stakeholders, we're not so much interested in countering somebody else's argument, but rather this would be more focused on how the different viewpoints coexist with one another. So in terms of the concept of how you find your answer is still the same, just that when we talk about thesis and antithesis, there is a higher chance that you may need to explain the viewpoint with regards to the stance of the person. Okay, so you can see for this question here, we are looking at how there are multiple stakeholders and how they value the Brazilian nut. So Yi Ling talks about how the indigenous tribes actually benefit from the nuts and their oil. As you can see, people who live in the forest. So this one point of view. Next, we talk about how Eric talks about how the city dwellers find them important as well. So we're looking at how these two ideas coexist with one another, which in this text. Now, if you ask me whether there's a difference or increase in difficulty, let's say when we have this scenario being played out, well, I'll say that really depends on the text and how the information is being presented. Okay, so when we have non-fiction text, there are 1,001 ways where the examiner can put forth information to you. Okay, so let me just talk about this a little. So your non-fiction text, we have those those that are informative, and we can have those that challenge certain viewpoints. Your informative texts are the easiest that we can encounter. So it's like our text today. I'm just giving you information regarding Brazilian nut trees. That's all. I'm not interested to argue anything. But there are some that actually challenge certain viewpoints. Like from what I know, I recently was reviewing one of the past year school papers. Some of you may be familiar. There's one on Chinese parenting style, and inside the text, it's quite interesting how the author actually, I would say, argues his point on how a Chinese parenting style isn't the best, and he juxtaposes it with a Western parenting style and how both have their merits. So you see, in so doing, when you have two different types of parenting style, you're trying to argue which one is better than the other. That's where that kind of element makes the text challenging. So for O level, I would say that the Cambridge examiner is rather open, and there isn't a very clear trend on whether they will set which kind they will set. But rather, it's quite clear for me that when we have those argumentative ones that challenge certain viewpoints, the text will be a bit more difficult to comprehend. And usually, when you have your questions, they will love to ask about the tone of the author and how the author feels about certain things. Okay, so usually for especially our friends who are going for their Sec 4 prelim soon next year, just brace yourself for a very interesting text. All right, so let's go back to this part here. So question 17A, we're looking at two examples that Yi Ling can substantiate her point with, and they are from paragraph 3. Now we look at 17B together. Now they also talk about how a phrase that Eric can use to support his view. Okay, so when we talk about supporting his view of city dwellers, well, I'll say this is a bit weird here, because there isn't any point. They just say city dwellers find that important, right? Because when I have this kind of question where they ask me about phrase, the first thing I would think about and my mental model is to actually come up with certain synonyms and vocabulary words that I can leverage on. So it's my pre-existing knowledge. When I use it and I search the text, it'll be much faster. Okay, but for this case, probably we'll just we'll zoom in on the word city dweller or maybe urban people. Those can provide you some clues and some leads into where to go and what to do. All right. Okay, let's go to paragraph 3 and obtain these two answers now. All right. So over here, as I have shared with everyone earlier, we're looking at how the the rural forest tribes have some liking for the nuts, right? Because we are looking at how they live in forest and they benefit from the nuts and the oil. So actually, it's over here. The first part, they provide protein and calories for tribal rural Amazons. And the next thing we observe that the nut can provide is the one of cooking. Yeah, yeah, the oil extracted can be used for cooking, used in cooking. Okay. Now we need to be very clear. The text, when Yiling talks about it, we're just referring to the the Brazilian nuts and their oil. So the whole that nut tree has many functions, right? The pods can do something, the tree can provide something, yada yada. But we're only interested in two specific elements of the tree. And therefore, when we go back to our text here, we need to be very laser focused on the objective, which is to talk about the nuts. So the question, the text really explicitly state nuts can do something here. So you need to take note and put this in. Next, they talk about oil, and the oil can do what? Da 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 da. Here, so you also need to put it in. All right, and you can see they also talk about what tree bark, empty pots. All these are additional information we don't care because they're not relevant. Next, there's when we look at 17b, we talk about how Eric thinks the city dwellers can leverage on the Brazilian nut for certain benefits. So we don't have the word city dweller, but I can see the word urban Brazilians. So it gives me that clue that the phrase is somewhere near. So if we look at the first sentence before this, they talk about how the oil extractor can be used for cooking. They're still talking about my tribal people. Looking at the subsequent sentence, there's a substantial market for nut oil among these Brazilians that live in urban areas as a lubricant in clothes, making artist paints, and the cosmetic industry. So you can see it seems that there's only one sentence related to my urban Brazilians. And we're looking at how they find them important. And you see there's this vocab here which also raises an eyebrow. Substantial, that means the quantity is quite high. All right. So when we talk about market being substantial, it really raises that kind of suspicion and that attention to me. And they talk about how there's a market for the oil among the urban Brazilians. So actually, this will be my answer. Because if the city dwellers find it important, there's that kind of demand, and when there's that kind of demand and there are people who are willing to supply, there's that kind of market. And when there's a lot of trading, a lot of suppliers coming on board, a lot of people buying, that means that there's a substantial market. It means a lot of things are happening there: buying, trading, selling. And I think it's very important when we code, there needs to be a code to include urban Brazilians. So we're not just talking about any Tom, Dick, Harry, but we're looking at a particular demographic of people and how they benefit and they want to use the Brazilian oil. Okay, so with this in mind, let's write our answers for the next two questions. So the two examples that Yiling can give, firstly, is the Brazil nut provides protein and calories for the people living in forests. And secondly, we look at how the oil extracted from the nuts can be used for cooking. All right. Then now we talk about the city dwellers for Eric's case. And you can say the phrase is substantial market. Yep, that's all. Then we have our answers here. Okay, let's take a look at question 18 now. Okay, in paragraph 4, we are told that the creature, the agoutis, bury their seeds for later use. So you are trying to ask you for some inference with regards to these three words, for later use. So we talk about later use. We are looking at how something is a certain activity is done in the future. So it's a future activity. So we need to define what this activity is. Okay, what the agoutis is going to do with the nuts. Next, we observe how there's this word here. They ask you why. So they are looking for a reason. The writer puts an inverted commas in the word planted. So for those of you who are who actually use this in your essay writing, you will understand that when you have a inverted commas over a certain word, we're actually showing that the word refers to the word itself and not the meaning. So in this case, we are looking at how there isn't a real action of planting a seed, but rather the agoutis doing a certain action that is related to planting actually has a different intent. Okay, so when you plant something, the intent is for you to let the seedling grow, become a tree, produce flowers and fruits. But in this case, the intent for the very act of bearing the seed is not so much for growing. So you can see it's probably related to its later use. So it bury the seed, so it's like maybe like storing the seed up for food, in a similar way of how we put money in the bank for storage. All right, so if we look further in our text here, in paragraph 4 here, we are introduced to the fact of the agoutis here. Okay, now we observe that they will gone the pods open, eat some of the seeds while bearing others for later use. So you can see the idea is eating some while bearing others for later use. So as an animal, the seeds serve as food. So it's very clear cut that your later use here got to do with your consumption of the seeds for food. All right. Now, if we look further down, we are looking at how these seeds will germinate into new Brazil nut trees. And they further explain to you that the seeds are planted by the agoutis in shady places. Okay, we stop there. So you can see the intent of the agoutis bearing the seeds up actually is not to help the seed plant, or they are not trying to grow Brazil nut trees. The idea is they're storing it up for future consumption. But in so doing, by burying it into the soil, it provides the right conditions for the Brazil nut tree to actually grow. So you can see the word planted here is a twofold meaning, right? In terms of the agoutis, we are looking at how they bury for food. But at the same time, this very act of putting the seed in the ground is what we scientifically known as the preparation for future growth and flowering and maturity, right? So with that in mind, come let's take a look at our last two short answer questions here. So the later use that we're interested in is the future consumption. The agotis are eating the Brazilian nut, the Brazil nut in future for food. All right. Now let's take a look at question the part two first. So how do we answer this question? So we will say it as so when we look at the inverted commas, we need to think of we need to put ourselves in the writer's shoe and think why would he do that? Okay, so after we put ourselves in the writer's shoe, we will actually see that it's not so much about the writer purposely putting this word for some literary device, but rather is more of the intent of the agotis. So I encourage you to answer this question based on the kind of mental model that you have, and imagine you put yourself in the agouti shoe, and why will you be bearing the seed? Are you really planting it, or you are trying to keep it for later future consumption? Right. So how our answer is as such. The intent of agotis is to bury the Brazil nuts for future consumption. But an unintended effect is that it provides the favorable conditions for it to germinate and grow into a sampling. Okay, and that'll be our answer. This question is slightly more challenging, so I'll just give everyone some time to take in this information, especially the answer. Look at how it's being phrased, especially with regards to this intent as well as the unintended effect. You need to understand this these two ideas before you are able to grasp how we approach a question. Okay, just give everyone some time to take in this information from this page first before we move further on to our summary. All right. Come, let's take a look at the summary question now. So you're supposed to summarize the difficulties. Okay, this is the keyword. Link with the Brazilian nut trees for commercial growers and individuals. So it's a two-pronged question here. A, you need to commercial growers. B, you see private individuals, and you have two paragraphs to search for your answers. All right, come, let's take a look. Paragraph 4 and 5 now. Okay, it's kind of messy, so let me erase everything. Okay, so when we talk about the challenges, the difficulties, right, or the challenges in growing this what's it called, the Brazil nut. Okay, so looking at paragraph, so we talk about difficulties, right? It could be difficulties growing. It could be difficulties dealing with the fruit, harvesting. Because the word difficulty here gives you that kind of bandwidth to play around. So anything that is challenging is negative, right? Something that isn't good, that is talking about how the Brazilian nut tree is trying to cause trouble for your people living there. Yes, they can take that point out and use it. All right. So look at this paragraph 4 here. There are several obstacles. So you can see this already linked to difficulties. So we know that it is very near already. Now we talk about how it's difficult to grow them in plantations because production is low and therefore not viable. Okay, you can see this is the first point. It's a difficulty with regards to growing your this, what's this thing called, the Brazil nut, on large scale farms. Then they move on to talk about how the trees are very sensitive to deforestation due to their complex ecological requirements. So over here, this is also another point. That is a difficulty that is linked to the tree, right? Because you have very specific requirements. You see, they further go on to say that the fruit is only produced in pristine forests, and uh, and because they also have difficulties because only a specific kind of insect, this thing called the large body bees, can pollinate the flower. And they also rely only on, you can see, rely solely on the agotis for seed dispersal. So all these are already your difficulties linked to, in this case, the propagation or the reproduction of the Brazil nut. Now, if we move on further, you can see that this part where the rodent gone, the pods open, this one is just telling you how the rodent disperse the seed. It is not related to difficulty. That's why we don't talk about it. Now we go on further by talking about how most of the seeds are planted by agotis in shady places. So this is also a challenge, that the seed is dispersed to a place where it is suboptimal for growth. That means it's a place where the growth cannot take place. Now, as we move on further, we talk about how the sampling has to wait for years and necessary sunlight to reach before it can start growing, which is also another very complex condition that would limit the chances of the Brazil nut growing. Lastly, we also talk about how deforestation continues to undermine the ability to grow. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, about 8 points already. All right. Now looking at paragraph 5 here, we talk about how this is just a statement. They are planted, so no difficulties. But you can see that they pose a serious threat. Falling pots pose a serious threat to people living around it. So this is a difficulty related to your nut tree for your individuals. And we also talk about how the nuts sink in fresh water, which can cause localized flooding. Not forgetting how the individuals risk serious sickness or illness for consumption of the shell. Okay, so I have 3 points here. Okay, so you can see from this text here, I'll say the points are very nicely clustered together in these 2 paragraphs. All right, so it is not as bad as certain school summaries where the points are split across 3 to 4 paragraphs, and you have a hard time trying to derive all the answers, all of them at one go. Okay, but for this case, I'll say the challenge is how we're going to summarize them and paraphrase the adjectives as well as the verbs into useful and appropriate points. Okay, so what I have with me at the bottom here is actually the script as what we have, and I have already nicely highlighted all the points which are in blue, here in purple and pink. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the questions. Okay, so first one, we look at how the production is low and not economically viable. Okay, so this what I'm going to do is I'm going to share point by point my paraphrase answer, and thereafter I will talk about what are the words I paraphrase and why I paraphrase it in certain ways. First point, production is low and therefore not currently economically viable. So we are looking at how the low output renders it financially unsustainable. Yeah, that's my first point. So when we look at low production, we are looking at the output, and therefore they say it's economically viable, not currently economically viable. That means it's economics of is related to finance, and viable means something cannot be sustained over the long period, so it's unsustainable. Okay. Now, the second point that I observe is here. They are extremely sensitive to deforestation due to their complex ecological requirement. So instead of saying sensitive, I'll say it's very reactive to deforestation due to multifaceted natural conditions needed. Okay, so we are looking at how sensitive is changed to reactive, and how over here deforestation is, we'll keep it complex ecological requirement. Complex, the requirement, when the requirement is complex, that means there's multiple things to take into consideration. So instead of using complicated, I'll use the word multifaceted. And we look at ecological requirements, you can say the natural conditions that are needed, right? But if you want to leave the word what is it, if you want to leave it as ecological requirement, it's still okay. All right, now you can see the next one is on how they produce fruits only in a pristine forest. So produce, you can say they bear fruits. In pristine means the whole place hasn't been touched before, so untouched forest. So I just change bear with untouched here. Okay, I'll say this one isn't very difficult, this part, or these few points. Fourthly, we talk about how here the bees one, large bodied bees, which are the only insects capable of pollinating the tree's flowers. So you can see the word only, I can change it to they rely solely. See this the word to change for only, solely on large bodied bees for pollination. Okay, just take note. For things like your pollination, all these technical terms, I'm not in favor of changing it. And if you change the word form of a particular word, let's say from bearing, from what's the fruits one? Okay, let's say they produce food, you say fruit production. All right, the very fact that you use the word production, which is a different word form, will not constitute a change in the word, because the base word, which is produce, is still the same. In order to be recognized or to get the point or your content marks, you need to make sure that the base word is changed totally. So if I say produce, I change to bear, sure, it is very safe. But if you're just going to change the word form, fruit production only in untouched forest, cannot. Okay, so uh, just want everyone to know, from that marker's point of view, they only have 10 points on the paper. So they have from the text, and 10 paraphrase points. And what happens is, from those points from the text, they will underline the words that they require the students to change. So as as a student, you probably will not know what are these underlined words, but I can tell you that uh, all the time these words are your verbs and your adjectives. So when you derive a point, it's very important to first identify your verbs and your adjectives. Only change the necessary words, because if you change the other technical words, you risk diluting the meaning and losing the content mark. Okay, so once you have identified your verbs and adjectives, you change it. You either can do a one-to-one replacement, which is what I'm doing so far. This will save you on your word count. Or you can use more words to explain. For example, instead of saying low output, you can say a low number of fruits being born will render it financially as unsustainable. Also can. Okay, but I'll advise you to choose your battles wisely. If you can identify more than 8 points, go for the points that you are more confident in your paraphrasing. Ignore those that are super long-winded. Okay. All right. So much for some commercial pep talk. Let's move on to our fifth point here. So we are looking at how they also rely on the ogotis for seed dispersal. So you see, I want to use the word rely again, so I can say that you are completely dependent. So I'm trying to define the word rely. Say on, and you change it to agotis. And you see, I don't have a word for a seed dispersal. I can say to carry away the seeds, carry their seeds away. So again, I have my two words that I changed. Carry their seeds away. These two things do not. All right. 6. We're looking at how the agotis plant the seeds in places with shady places. All right. So I'll say that we can't just paraphrase the word planted because it dilutes that meaning. The meaning of this planted here is not so much about the agotis trying to do conservation efforts, but rather they're trying to bury the seeds in the ground. All right, you need to remember when we talk about the intent of something. As such, we'll say that the seeds are buried in areas without adequate sunlight. Where is it? Yes, and thus delaying the germination and growth. They are germination and growth. Okay, so if you look back at our point here, so I'm looking at how instead of saying planted, I'm saying the seeds are buried, and shady places I change it to areas without adequate sunlight. And you see, they have to wait for years for nearby tree to fall, necessary sunlight to grow, and start to grow again. So you can see the difficulty is not for waiting for the tree to fall or the necessary sunlight. The difficulty is that there is that delay in their growth. You see, then necessary sunlight to start growing. Okay, so we're looking at growth, and here the young sampling. So we talk about sampling before a sampling can even occur. We're looking at germination. So this part here is a bit of an ambitious paraphrase. Okay, but if you are really clear of what is happening in the text, you can do so. And you can, I think the main thing is you need to ask yourself, what is important point and what are irrelevant points that we will not use. And therefore, I would omit the information that is irrelevant. Okay, I hope everyone is following so far. Now let's take a look at 7 points. So apart from this, we are looking at how deforestation remains an existential threat. So I will say illegal logging has undermined the survival of undermine the survival constantly and undermine their survival constantly. Okay, so we are looking at how the continuous is changed to constantly and how the threat is undermine the survival. I'm just doing a definition kind of approach here. Next, we look at how and paragraph 5 the the threats and the difficulties the Brazilian nut has on private individuals, right? Falling pots pose a serious threat to people living around it. So you can see the falling pots. I'll stop. I sorry for I forgotten to mention earlier. They are heavy and rigid. So I will just say weighty and hard pots undermine the safety of nearby people when they fall, when they drop down from trees, when they drop from trees. Okay, so you can see they pose a threat. I'll just say undermine safety. I change heavy and rigid to towards weighty and hard. And next, when we talk about how people around it, they say nearby people. And when they talk about falling, I just say when they drop from the trees. Okay, so you can see I don't have the one-to-one replacement of the words all the time. Even if I had, which I will have because I'm a teacher and I have my dictionary with me, some of the words may not be appropriate for one-to-one swap. That's why I would prefer to use the definition instead of saying you fall. If I'm going to use some other vocab words, it just doesn't make sense. That's why I rather just change it to when it drop from trees. Easily understood by people, and there is a little contention to the point. All right. Now, looking at number nine, now when we look at how the nuts sink in fresh water, which clogs the waterways. So when we talk about sink, we can say the nuts are submerged in water, and thereby, when they say clog waterways, you can say that you can they are impeding the waterways, resulting in floods. Okay, so uh, sink is changed to submerge. Clog is impede, and cause is resulting. And the last point is here: individuals with serious illness because the shells contain high level of toxins. So everyone can see here this point, the last sentence of paragraph 5. So you can say the shells contain large quantities of toxins, posing a high possibility of dangerous ailments, of developing dangerous ailments. Okay, so we're looking at high level of toxic. I say large quantities. Okay, then we look at serious illnesses. I'll say there's a risk. I'll say there's a high possibility. Serious illnesses, I'll say dangerous ailments. Okay? And developing here is just to talk about how people will contract these illnesses. Okay, the idea is people who touch, smell, or eat the shell will come down with all these sickness. So it is important to highlight this point too. All right. So that's all for our summary. I'll just leave this here for a bit. So if you have any questions with regards to this summary text as well as how I do so, please sound out to me, please. All right, everyone. If there are no further questions with regards to this summary or our paper 2, then I thank you so much for joining me this afternoon on our Right Set Work TikTok session. I'm teacher Nathan, and if you'd like to learn more about O level English with me, do join me every Wednesday to Friday this month. We'll be looking at O level papers and paper 2 in particular. And if you have friends in primary 5, do join me at 10:30 in the morning or 2:30 in the afternoon, where we will be looking at our primary 5 and 6 prelim papers. If not, I'll see everybody around on TikTok. Bye bye.